All right, welcome to Real Truth Real Quick. My name is Rick Smith. I'm here with Todd Wagner.
Hello, Rick. Hello,
Todd.
Real Truth Real Quick friends.
Well, listen, we got another question. You got all these questions coming in. The question today, there's a guy in the Bible named David.
Yep.
David did some pretty crazy stuff. But in the Bible, even despite his crazy stuff that he did, it says David was a man after God's own heart. So can you help me reconcile how you can do crazy stuff and still be a man after God's own heart?
I think it's in Acts 13. Paul's talking to people, and he's just saying there that God had to replace Saul with a man after his own heart. And you're right. You look at David and you go, okay, well, there's a lot that David did. Most famously, not only did he kill a giant, but he struggled with a giant of sin, which is he slept with another man's wife, and then he murdered that man to cover up the fact that he slept with his wife, and didn't respond to it immediately on his own. And so you go, how could that guy be called years later by Paul a man after his own heart? And so here's how I would answer that question, is that God knows that all of us are not like him, right? All men have sinned. All men fall short of the glory of God. Romans 3 says, there's none that seek God. There's none that do right. So nobody in that category who doesn't seek God and doesn't do right could be considered a man after God's own heart. But David did profess, Psalm 27, this one thing will I seek. When David did sin and he was weighted down, the Psalms talk about that, like being weary as if being beaten down by the sun and having all his vitality drained out of him. I believe that's in Psalm 32. David said, oh God, I restore to me, a relationship with you and be my hiding place. And in Psalm 51, when he finally dealt with his sin with Bathsheba, he said, God, I know what you want. You want a guy who hates sin. And in that, David was a man after God's own heart. He agreed with God. That's what confession means, by the way. When you confess your sin, you are showing that you're a man after God's own heart. The word confess means to agree. And if we confess our sins, God is faithful and just to cleanse us from our sin and to forgive us from all unrighteousness. And so David did that. He said, God, I know you don't want a bunch of external acts. I know you don't want some form of worship. What you want is a broken heart and a contrite spirit. And David had that, okay? David was a man after God's own heart because he loved God's word. And probably the best way that I can model that or show that to you is by taking a look at what, like some of the Psalms in Psalm 19. And so not in everything that David did was he a man after God's own heart. Okay, clearly his act with Bathsheba was not something that God would celebrate. But Psalm 19, David says this: the law of the Lord is perfect. It says in verse 8, the precepts of the Lord are right. In verse 9, the fear of the Lord is clean. God's word is more desirable than gold, verse 10. Yes, much fine gold, sweeter also than the drippings, than the honey and the drippings of the honeycomb. And so David says at the end of that, in verse 14, very famously, let the words of my mouth, let the meditations of my heart be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, my rock and my redeemer. And so David was a man after God's own heart in that he often loved what God loved. And that's when I become a man after God's own heart. Now look, I, like David, though I've never by the grace of God, done specifically the one thing that is the most egregious of all David's sins, never slept with another man's wife, and then killed the man to cover that up. I've sinned in many ways that are an offense to God. But when I realize that and I agree with God, that's sin, okay? I love what God loves. I hate what God hates, okay? I seek to do justice, to love kindness, and to walk humbly with the Lord. That's who David was. In other words, when you're looking for somebody, you want to know, are they a man after God's own heart? Don't look for perfection, look for direction. And clearly the direction of David's life was after the Lord. Now, he had some rather spectacular deviations, okay? Don't we all? And so we are all, as the words to the song say, prone to wander, prone to leave the God that we love. But the key is when we leave God, do we return to him with a broken heart and a contrite spirit? Do we agree with God that was sin? Do we repent? Do we turn? Do we make amends in every way possible? Do we seek to live for the glory of God and to testify of his goodness? Do we sing of his loving kindness and justice? Do we sing his praise forever, like Psalm 101 says? And so, one of the things that I would say about David is he wasn't perfect, all right? But he absolutely was committed to making the purpose of his life as a rule, all right? His direction was towards the things of God and loved his word and loved his way.
That's good stuff. So I mean, this really gives a lot of hope to you and I. I mean, not just something that was written thousands of years ago.
Right.
This is hope for guys like you and I who want to be guys after God's own heart that continue to go prone to leave the God.
Absolutely. I hope it. Listen, I hope it can be said of me that I'm a man after God's own heart. I don't think it should ever be said of me that my heart is as pure as God's. There is a reason we don't worship man. Okay, there's a reason that we don't trust in our flesh. Our heart is desperately sick and deceitful above all else. Okay, but we have a God who redeems us. We have a God who is transforming us, and who one day will finish and complete this good work which He began in us. And it does give us a tremendous amount of, I think, encouragement that God would say, hey, Todd, in that you are aligned with me, yielded to my spirit, in love with my word, that's a man after my own heart. By the way, this is how I would define effective discipleship. Okay? It's spending time with others while you have on your heart what's on the heart of God. That is the most effective way to disciple people. And so how can I be sure that I have on my heart what's on the heart of God? Okay? First of all, to not walk in the counsel of the wicked or stand in the path of sinners or sit in the seat of scoffers, but to delight myself in the law of the Lord, and on that law meditate day and night. That's Psalm 1, written by David. And David says, that's a blessed man. Not only is he a blessed man, he's a man that can be rightly called a man after God's own heart.
Good stuff. Hey, you have a resource that we have on your blog. I'm going to link to it in the show notes. How to be God's man, how to be God's woman. There's a handout. I think that'd be awesome for people to check out, print that off, and use that as they want to. All right. We'll
be encouraged, man. Seek God. Seek first His kingdom and all His righteousness, and all these things will be added to you, even the label, rightly by God, that you're a man or woman after His own heart.
Awesome. Good stuff, and we will see you next week on another episode of Real Truth Real Quick.